Welcome home to philosophy, where we wonder about everything and anything is possible. Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Corey, the laughing philosopher. Life is complicated. The world is complicated, and you are complicated. Figuring out how to live a happy, meaningful life, guided by wisdom and reason, is not easy. Is life a game? What is love? Should I fear death? Is this a just world? Almost from the moment of birth, you've been told how to behave, how to fit in, and how to fulfill other people's expectations. You fear that you will lack importance or cease to exist in the lives of others if you think for yourself and question the rules and roles you've been told define you. Wisdom and reason will remove this illusion so you can live authentically in the world around you, find your true purpose, and become your real self. Episode number 70. Logic or passion? Mr. Spock or Dr. McCoy? The great philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, known for his optimism and his conclusion that we live in the best possible world, was once deciding whether or not to marry a certain woman. He made two lists, one list of advantages and one list of disadvantages. As the second list turned out to be longer, he decided not to marry her. Head or heart? Logic or emotion? Mr. Spock is logical. Dr. McCoy is emotional. Who is right? Logic is never wrong. However, philosophers can prove anything using logic. We can even prove that unicorns exist, but you don't. Draw a box. Inside the box, write two sentences. The first sentence is, unicorns exist. The second sentence is, the two sentences in this box are false. Now, let's consider the second sentence. If it is true, then both sentences are false. Hence, the second sentence is false. In other words, the second sentence is true if and only if it is false. However, the second sentence cannot be both true and false. This is a contradiction, and contradictions are impossible. Just try to imagine a pencil that is sharp and blunt at the same time. A contradiction is necessarily false. The second sentence cannot be true because it leads to a contradiction. Therefore, the second sentence must necessarily be false. Thus, it is not the case that both sentences in the box are false. So, at least one of the sentences is true. Since the second sentence cannot be true, it must necessarily be the first sentence which is true. Therefore, unicorns exist. This next proof will show that either I do not exist or you do not exist. But we will never know from the proof which one of us does not really exist. Draw a box with 3 sentences inside of it. The first sentence is, I exist. The second sentence is, you exist. The third sentence is, at least one of the 3 sentences in this box is false. Let's first consider the third sentence. If it is false, then it is not the case that at least one of the 3 sentences is false. Hence, all 3 sentences are true. If all 3 sentences are true, then the third sentence is true. In other words, the third sentence is true if and only if it is false. However, the third sentence cannot be both true and false. This is a contradiction and an impossibility. Therefore, the third sentence cannot be false. Hence, it must be true. So, it is the case that at least one of the 3 sentences in the box really is false. It can't be the third sentence, which is true. Therefore, either the first sentence or the second sentence must be false. If it is the first sentence that is false, then I do not exist. If it is the second sentence, then you do not exist. Therefore, either you or I do not exist. But we don't know from the proof which one of us it is. So now, let me prove to you that you don't exist. Draw a box with 2 sentences. The first sentence is, you do not exist. The second sentence is, both sentences in this box are false. Let's first look at the second sentence. If it's true, then the second sentence would be false. It is true if and only if it is false. But this is a contradiction and impossible. So the second sentence cannot be true. Clearly then, it must be false. If the second sentence is false, then it is not the case that both sentences in the box are false. Therefore, one of the sentences must necessarily be true. Since the second sentence is not true, it must necessarily be the first sentence which is true. Therefore, you do not exist. Using the same perfect logic, I could go on to prove that I do not exist, but the details of the proof must be left to you, since from this proof, I don't exist to prove I don't exist. I learned these proofs from the philosopher Raymond Smullyan in 1978. So, what is wrong with these three proofs? Nothing. Each proof is perfectly sound and perfectly logical. Using common logic, impeccable logic, you can prove anything, no matter how silly and absurd. Logic is never wrong. However, logic isn't always right. Mr. Spock is never wrong, but Mr. Spock isn't always right. As I write this episode, it is May 18, the birthday of Mr. Bertrand Russell, one of the greatest logicians who ever lived. A skeptical friend once challenged Bertrand to use 2 + 2 = 5 to prove something. On the spot, Bertrand delivered a perfectly logical proof that he and the Pope are one and the same person, and Bertrand Russell is the Pope. Humans are persuaded by logic and reason. So we use logic and reason to justify our actions and decisions to ourselves and others. However, the choices we make are really motivated by emotion. Our behavior is driven not by reason, but by human instincts and passions. Still, we have a profound need to feel we really are rational and logical. So, we logicalize our behavior. We deceive ourselves and others by manufacturing elaborate explanations of how our actions were really based on reason and logic in the first place. The Italian sociologist Vilfredo Pareto, born in 1848, argued that human behavior is not rational. Our explanations of why we behave as we do are really just designed to give logicalization to our non-logical behavior. Have you ever tried using reason and logic to talk a child out of its fear of the dark, or a woman out of her fear of snakes, or a man out of his fear of losing his hair? It's useless to use logic to convince people their fears don't make sense. Emotion always wins over logic. Imagination always wins over reason. Logically, a marriage may look doomed on paper. But if two people engender feelings of love and excitement in each other, the heart wins and the head loses. In your life, would you rather seek help from the logical Mr. Spock or the emotional Dr. McCoy? Logic is the art of reasoning well. On one hand, basing thoughts and actions on chains of logic and reasoning empowers Mr. Spock to behave more sensibly and to make better sense of what is. On the other hand, basing behavior on feelings and passions may be non-logical, but Dr. McCoy is able to take account of more emotional but no less real and no less human considerations that transcend the logical. Humans like to be rational and logical, but logic and reason alone cannot make sense of all human experience. Feeling and intuition play an important role in human understanding. You are necessarily both a thinking and feeling being. But you need to learn when to use reason and logic and when to use feeling and emotion. You need to learn when to reason like Mr. Spock and when to feel like Dr. McCoy. Whenever you see people running around like chickens with their heads hacked off, it's because no one knows whether to obey the head or the heart, so nothing makes sense. You stop being a child only if you learn when to use reason and logic and when to use passion and emotion to navigate your relationships. Should you ever marry or never marry? Sometimes it's better to think like Mr. Spock. What is important to you? What can't you do unmarried? You can only do if you're married. What can't you do married? You can only do unmarried. Do you have to be married to have a child? Is a husband or wife really necessary or just a convenience? Don't feel, just calculate. However, sometimes it's better to think like Dr. McCoy. Should I marry Jim or not marry Jim? How does he make you feel? When you're with him, do you feel a part of you come alive you didn't even know existed? Don't reason, just feel. Should you quit your job? If your reason for quitting is low pay or a bad boss, is quitting really the answer? What would Mr. Spock do? There is nothing that can't be repaired and no one who can't be improved. Before you change your job, change your attitude. So, the next time you have an important choice to make, don't rush into anything. Don't rush to embrace logic or emotion. Mr. Spock isn't always right. Logic isn't always right. Or you and I don't exist, and unicorns do. Dr. McCoy isn't always right. Emotion isn't always right. Or every happy wedding would lead to a happy marriage. But some do, some don't. In life, in your life, whenever you choose poorly, whether to reason or to feel, life makes no sense. Choose wisely, and you will see the world as it really is, and see yourself as you really are. There ought to be a medal for this kind of bravery. Thank you for listening. I hope you will take what you've learned and be a better person. Think for yourself. Question everything. Accept nothing that does not agree with your own reason and good sense. And I promise you, despite its sham and drudgery, you will get on pretty well in this crazy world. I'm Dr. Robert Corey. Until we meet again, be good.